You're just going to put your right sides together. So right sides of the front and back piece together. And I just do that so that I can more easily match up my shoulders. So you'll just take your right sides and open it out. Match up your seam line first. Try to get the seam line as perfect as you can. And then pin that. And just pin them together. And you're going to do that for the other side as well. Alright, so now my shoulders are pinned. Same thing on the other side, right sides together. Flip it out. Match up the seam. You really do want to try to get that seam as perfect as you can. It seems like a small thing, but once your dress is completed, it can change the entire finished look. Alright, now we're just going to go to the sewing machine and stitch these together. Alright, so using a regular stitch, we'll just go ahead and stitch those together at 5/8. There's one. And grab my last one. Okay, and then go to your ironing board and press both of these open like this, and then come back and join me again. Once you've finished stitching all of that together, this is what you should have, and it should still be open at the side. And then we're just going to move on here to step number 13. And for step number 13, you're going to be turning in your facings and pressing them. So the right side of your fabric, which are these long pieces, you want to turn them to the inside, and then you have your facing on the outside. And you're just going to take the top facing by itself, and you're going to turn it in 5/8, roughly like this, and press it. So only do that to the facing and do it all the way around that whole perimeter. And if you have any problems getting it to turn under, you can clip it. And to clip it, you'll just take your scissors and make sure, once again, that you only grab the facing, and you can just cut in slightly like this, okay? So if you clip it like that, it just folds a little bit more easily. All right, so do that now. Turn in this entire facing on the front and the back, 5/8, press it, clip it where you need to, and then come back and I'll show you how to do the 3/8 trim. So once you've given it a good pressing and you've clipped, this is sort of what you should have. So you can see I've turned this under 5/8 on the facing, and then I've also clipped so that it will move a little bit more. So the next thing we need to do is trim this to 3/8. So I would recommend you go on the inside and grab it like this, just so that you can make sure you don't cut into the right side of your fabric. And I can pretty much eyeball what I need to cut off for 3/8. If you're nervous about it, you can take your tape measure and then just measure it quickly so that you can see roughly what you need to cut out there. It's about half of what's there. So I'm just going to go through here and cut. And you'll want to do that for the entire piece. And always make sure that you're just cutting the facing. That's why I would recommend that you hold the facing like this so that you can make sure you never grab the right side of your fabric. All right, so I'm going to stop there, and you guys can do the rest. So make sure that you trim the entire facing around the entire perimeter of the dress here, and then come back and join me again. For step number 14, I've laid my dress out like this just so it's a little bit easier for you to see what I'm doing. And we get to actually do a part that I always find really exciting, which is putting the sides of the dress together. So if you lay your dress out like this, I feel that that's the easiest way to see what you're doing. You're just going to take your right sides and pin them together. And I would recommend that you match the seam first. So match the seam. And then you're just going to be pinning from the top all the way down to the bottom. So these are my facings pinned together and open, as you can see, and then I'm just going to put both of my sides together and then lay the dress like this and pin all the way down. And you'll want to make sure that you match up your notches as best as you can. And you can use as many or as few pins as you want. I prefer to just hold these pieces together as I stitch them, especially on these long pieces. So I'm just going to put a few pins in the top on each side, and that will be enough for me. So there's one side. Now I need to do the other side. So once again, right side of the fabric together with right side of the fabric. These are my facings. Open out the facing, match the seam lines. And that's very important to match the seam lines. Otherwise, when you get your dress done, it will not look nice, I promise you. Everything lays better when the seams match up as perfectly as possible. Pin that together. And then I'll do a few pins. Now that I've pinned the sides together, I will just take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to do a regular 5/8 inch stitch on both sides, all the way down to the bottom. So let me show you how I do that now. Just as a reminder, this is a really good time to check your bobbin and your thread because you're about to do a very long stitch on two sides. So I have enough bobbin thread, but my thread here at the top of my machine is a little bit low. I think I have just enough to get through one seam before I need to refill the top up here, get a new thread for myself. So I am going to stitch one side and hopefully I will have enough, and then I will have to switch my thread. So just doing a regular 5/8 inch stitch. Now, when you're sewing the seam here, I would recommend you sew right up to the pin as close as possible, just to make sure that you really do get those seam lines together. Okay, so that's right next to the pin. because like I said earlier, you really want those seam lines to match. And then I'm just going to stitch down the rest of the side here. And do make sure, since your piece is getting long, that you continue to push fabric back that way so you don't get bunches of fabric here. Right, and I'll show you why I didn't pin mine all the way once we get to the bottom here. So when you're sewing, you usually have the bottom piece, which will get pulled longer sometimes, especially with fabrics that have a little bit of stretch in them like this does. So one is longer. And that is fine. I'm just going to true up that seam before I hem my dress. So I will take my scissors and just make this, cut it to make it end at the same place, and it will be fine. So you need to do that to both sides. I'm only showing you the one side because I am going to have to change my thread out. Now you want to go to your ironing board and just press this seam open like so. Okay. So go to the ironing board, press this open, and make sure that you do that on both sides. Then join me again. Here's my hem line after I've sewn both of the side pieces together. I just wanted to show you quickly how I'm going to true up those end hems here. So you're just going to take your scissors, and this is if your fabric even does this. Some of you, your fabric may not have as much stretch and may not do this. And you just start cutting until it matches the other side. And you really shouldn't need to cut that much. All right, so that's one side. Now I need to do the same thing on the other side. And that I'll do here. So here's my second one, same thing. Now I'm just going to gently start trimming that away until it matches the other side. Make sure to do it gradually. You'll be able to tell once you cut if it doesn't look gradual. See this little lump here? That needs to go. Fabric is so slippery. All right, so that is what it looks like once the seams are trued up. So I'll start by taking thread, and I like to double up my thread. So just putting that through the needle, and then I'm going to knot the ends. And I usually just knot mine twice. I'll cut off some of the excess here. Then you're going to take that side where you're going to be doing your tack and just fold it over slightly. And you'll put the pin in and just grab a little bit of the other fabric. So you're just going to grab a little bit of fabric from each of those pieces and just gently sew them together. And you don't need to do this a whole lot. I think 3 or 4 times is fine. Don't make it too tight, otherwise it will make a pucker on the outside of your fabric. So you don't want that. So just gently. It's okay even if it's just a little bit loose, so long as it's not tight. I'm gonna have to get my symbol for that one. All right, so once you've run it through 3 or 4 times, I would recommend that you pull on it just a tiny bit, just to make sure it's not tight. You really, really don't want it too tight. And then just go ahead and tie a knot and finish it. All right, and just cut off the excess. There we go. Remove the pin, and now that's tacked, so it's not going to move around. And if you flip it over so you can see the right side, you can see why you didn't want it tight, because if you had made this tight, it would make a pucker right here. So this is nice and loose, so it's just smooth. And that is what we want. For step 16, you will need piece 5 and piece 6. You should have a total of 4 piece 6 and also 4 number 5s. And 2 of number 5 and 2 of number 6 should be interfaced. So let me show you that. Here's an example of what we're trying to accomplish. So they're just going to be sewn together. And this is the right side of my material. So here I've already done what we're doing, which is basically sewing together our piece 6 and our piece 5. And those are already pressed open, so I'm just going to set those to the side. So the pieces that I'm going to show you how to do this, I'll be using the interfaced pieces. So if you haven't interfaced these, go ahead and do it now. Otherwise, continue. So when you're looking at your piece 5, you'll see that it has a notch, and you want to match that notch up with the notch on your piece 6. And that is how these pieces are going to get sewn together, like so. So just take both of your piece 5s, find where your notch is, and also be aware that they will be going in different directions. So, meaning this one curves like this, and the other one curves like this. So they should move upwards like this. And you're going to take your piece 6 and find your notch. I can see I have a notch here and a notch here. So this notch needs to match up with this notch here. So these are going to get sewn together like this. And then that means that this one, which has a notch here, will go to this piece. So right sides together, match up the notches, and then we need to pin those together so that we can stitch them. Now I prefer not to have too many pins in these thick interfaced sections, and that's just my personal preference. So you put in as many pins as you want. I'm just going to put a pin in at the top where I'll be starting my stitch, and then I will just hold the pieces together as I sew them. So matching up the top of the seam here. All right, Now I'm going to go to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch both of these at a 5/8 inch seam. Remember that I am only doing this with 2 pieces right now because I already did 2 other pieces. So after you finish this step, you should have 4 pieces that will look like this. So you should have 4 of those when you finish. 2 that are interfaced and 2 that are just regular. Okay, once you have all 4 of those, go to your ironing board and just press those seams open on all 4 of your pieces, like so. Once you've pressed everything open, you will have, as I said before, 2 interface sections and then also 2 right side sections. So these are going to be put right on top of each other, right sides together. So as you can see here, I have both of my right sides together. I'm going to do the same thing with the other 2 pieces. So 1 interface section with 1 regular section. All right, and make sure you match up your seams. That's the most important part. So go ahead and match up your seams. You put a pin in there. And you're not even going to be stitching that yet, but you just want to make sure that everything is lined up as it should be. Then I'm going to pin this where my dot is, because where that dot is where I'm going to be stopping my stitching. So if any of you need reference for that, because that's important, it's on piece 5. And you'll see the dot here, that needs to be marked because you are going to be stitching all of this closed, but not this. This is going to be open, which is why you need that marked. I'm just going to put 1 or 2 more pins in this because I know it's going to move around once I get it to the sewing machine. And you just need to pin all of this piece together. Match up your seams. All right, now once you have both of those pinned, pin as much as you need to or as little as you need to, you're going to find that dot and you're going to stitch that entire seam up to the top and then across and then back down all the way around through the seam to the corner here and up here. So you're going to stitch all of that closed. Make sure you leave from the piece 6 top to the dot open. That has to stay open. So pin both of these together. I'm going to pin this one some more. And then I'm also going to pin together this one. And then I will take them both to the sewing machine and stitch them together. So when you stitch this, I would recommend that you find your dot and just go ahead and start there. I'm just going to put the needle right on top of that dot. Go ahead and do a stitch and a back stitch there. And then continue on down the seam. And when you get to the bottom here, stop at where it looks like 5/8, and you can turn the fabric to test it to see. Okay, mine's almost perfectly at 5/8. So I'll just continue on without breaking the stitching. Same thing here. Stitch until it looks at about 5/8. Turn it to test it. That's great. And then continue stitching. When you reach the seam and you're ready to stitch through, make sure that both of the seams are pressed open before you stitch them. When you reach the bottom, turn it what looks like 5/8. Okay, that one went a little bit far, so I'm just going to back stitch a smooth. There, that's good. And continue stitching. And remember, you're not closing up this entire seam, so when you reach the end, you will stitch just to the end here. Do a back stitch. And then you should be left with this. So here is your long interfaced piece, your dot, and then you should have this that opens up just here after the dot. So stitch both of your pieces like that, and then try to press this open as best as you can. It will be a little bit tricky to do, but it will help make the finished product look better. So do try to press this open as best as you can. Use gentle heat so that you don't melt your interfacing. And then come back and go again.